During World War II, we had the Nuremberg trials, or after World War II, we had the Nuremberg trials, in which Nazis were put on trial for their actions. And the number one thing they had to say to defend themselves was, I was just doing my job. I was just doing what I was told to do. I was just obeying orders. I was just listening to orders. That was their number one defense for their actions. Even the SS, that was their defense. Some of the worst guys, some of the worst Nazis were the SS. So I have a question for you. Are you willing to disobey? Are you willing to not obey norms that could actually hurt people? And a lot of the norms you see nowadays where people are obeying authoritarians are hurting people, are hurting their own neighbors. And another thing you have to ask yourself is if disobedience is worth the risk to you. It may not be. And of course, there's different degrees of disobedience that you could participate in. And you have to decide which degrees you're going to focus on and how you're going to disobey, and hopefully it's in smaller ways. Another question I want you to ask yourself, and this one is very, very important, and I think it'll open your eyes even more. Has the act of obedience reached such immoral proportions that to be compliant is to be complicit in the destruction of society and the harming of innocent life? I would definitely say yes at this point. I think that's an absolute yes. When you look at the lockdown orders, you can see that neighbors are turning against each other. But you have to answer this question for yourself. You have to decide, well, have they reached such immoral proportions that society is completely just dying off and there's harming of innocent life? You have to answer that question for yourself. I cannot do that for you. But perhaps this could sway you to one side. 3 examples of the obedience that we have seen. One is neighbors snitching on each other. This is happening throughout most of the Western world. You look at Canada, it's happened there. You look at the United States, it's happened here. You look at Australia, it's happened there. I don't know about the UK, I'm pretty sure it's happened there as well. I mean, it's just, there's tons of snitches out there that are being turned against you because they rely on the TV to do what they're told. They are obedient to the TV, and they're just weaker people. And it's sad to see that they're so weak that they fall to what the news people say and what they're being told to do, that they're being told to obey. It's sad to see that, but you have to realize that right now is the best time to make good friends with your neighbors, and if you don't make good friends with them now, they may not be great people coming into the future. We saw this in Nazi Germany, we saw this in communist China, we saw this in communist Russia. This idea of people snitching on each other, on neighbors snitching on each other, just because of different ideas. And mainly, it was because one group, the people snitching, were obedient to the government, and the other were disobedient. Or perhaps they were just living their lives, but they were assumed to be disobeying the government just because they wanted to live their lives and be left alone. And that's the big thing we see. And then, when that happens, you end up in a gulag, or you end up in concentration camps. Both times. You cannot be obedient, and you have to make sure your neighbors are good, capable people and are not going to be snitching on you anytime soon. If you are going to disobey, please show this in action, not in word. There are going to be multiple times throughout your life where you are going to have to disobey, or you're going to have the choice whether or not to obey or disobey. And I hope you will prove through your action to disobey and do what's right. And going along with that, don't let fear dictate whether or not you're going to act or not act. Fear should never be allowed to dictate your actions at all, because you're always going to make bad actions when you let that dictate you. And if you have a family or if you are younger, defy in smaller ways. Now, this is the best way to do it anyway, but people who are generally single, don't have a family, can do it in much bigger ways that most people with families should not actually at this point, because they could be harmed in ways that aren't similar to how a single person could be harmed or how a person without a family could be harmed. Any of that. So please, if you're younger or if you have a family, defy in smaller ways. And I can't tell you those specific ways. I just can't. I don't know the certain circumstances that you are facing. I only know the ones that I'm facing. But when it comes time that you need to disobey, you will have in your head a split-second decision to either obey or disobey, and I hope you choose to disobey. Because I live in mountain time. I'm not going to know what someone is doing in California. I'm facing my own problems, and you're facing your own problems. I can't tell you exactly what you need to do because I don't know your circumstances. You have to look at the circumstances around you and figure out what you need to do to disobey in big ways or small ways, because there's always going to be a chance for you to disobey, whether that's disobey the government or your boss or any authority figure that is trying to be an authoritarian. During the rise of communism in Russia, we had the kulaks, which were a relatively successful group of farmers that produced a lot of the food for the whole country. And at one point, they were labeled by the government to be oppressors. They were called oppressors. We hear that word a lot nowadays, and after that happened, they were rounded up, and many times they would try to defend themselves. The kulaks would try to go out there, protect their farm, protect their family. Most of the time, they failed because the government gathered up people, citizens, normal citizens that would obey them to go and fight the kulaks, even their own neighbors. They would go and fight the kulaks, and that's how things go. The government will try to make sure that you obey. And after that happened, they get rounded up, brought into gulags. That's where you get the Gulag Archipelago series from Alexander Solzhenitsyn. And you get sent into a gulag where your feet will get frozen off because of frostbite. You have shoes that won't fit you. You don't get fed very much. You work a lot on railroads, and then you'll see your buddies fall over and die in the snow. It's just like that. It's a concentration camp. And that's how things go when you have people that obey and people that aren't willing to disobey. You have to be willing to disobey if you want to get anything done. If you want to do anything good in the world, you have to be willing to disobey and do what's right, not do your job. For police officers and military, remember, don't just say, I'm just doing my job. No, do what's right. Do what's right, do not do just your job. Do what's right. If you want to be remembered as anything, that's the big fact. You have to do what's right. You have to be willing to disobey. You have to be willing to go against authority and do what's right, even in the face of terrible things. The last quote I want to leave you with is from Henry David Thoreau, and he said, "Disobedience is the true foundation of liberty. The obedient must be slaves." I hope you enjoyed that video. I also have a Teespring store, by the way. I just made this. It says, "Do what is right," and it just has George Washington right there above, telling you to do what is right when the time comes. Also, don't forget to like, subscribe, turn notifications on, and share to make sure that 100, if not thousands of people get this important information every single day. And definitely subscribe, because YouTube has been unsubscribing a ton of people. I have barely been gaining any subscribers, and it's hard to find any of my videos nowadays because of the YouTube censorship, and this has happened to many other channels like it. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.